Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Festival of Enterprise, first webinar of the week, Monday, 13th of July. I'm Alex Chisnell, as always, and for the third time, it's my great pleasure to welcome Ben Kaplan. How you doing, Ben?
Hey, doing very well, but now you just added to the pressure because I got to start people's week off correctly.
I just thought of saying that.
Tips, got to give some inspiration, some motivation. This has to be the best week ever for your business. So, okay, lay the pressure down. I'm ready, though. I can rise to the occasion, I hope.
And it's the end of your day, of course, because you're still in Australia, I'm thinking.
Yes, still at the moment, but it's good. So, and it's kind of this strange sensation. I don't know if you spent any time in Australia, but you have this sensation like you're ahead of time, like just life. You live in tomorrow. So it's like I feel like I've been prepping for this all day, and it's your Monday morning, and so let's do it.
Awesome. Well, listen, welcome everybody for joining us as well. We've got a healthy audience today. I can see people piling in now that we've gone live and they're getting the notification. So we've got Paola from Derbyshire. We have got Karen, who's in Buckinghamshire. Andy, morning Andy. Yes, I'm from Bourne End, originally in Buckinghamshire. You've got a place in Cookham on the river. Cookham is a beautiful place to be. I used to live Wargrave, you might know as well, near Henley, Andy, which had a place on the river there, on the River Thames, which was pretty damn awesome too. So this is third webinar that Ben is going to be hosting for us, how to become a thought leader during crisis times. So just to frame this for you all, and we will dive in. Ben's already got his slides up and tested, so we're all good to go any second now. So would you like your company to become the go-to authority in its field? Would you like your brand to drive the current conversation in news or social media? And would you like to accomplish all of this during the current COVID-19 crisis? A special moment for sure when a whole new batch of rapid thought leaders will be quickly defined. So top global CEO Ben Kaplan is going to explore the thought leadership insights with us all today. You're going to learn how to establish key pillars of your company's expertise and then create macro, micro, and nano versions of it that are designed to be simple, surprising, and significant. So other key topics: changing dynamics of what creates thought leadership in a crisis versus normal times, how to be timely and relevant to ongoing pandemic media coverage, and the important role of data in establishing your thought leadership platform. As always, we'll be covering a lot more besides, but I will do a little bit of housekeeping and just say, as always, those of you who are regulars on here will know, as you're already doing, to post up in the chat box there. There's also the Ask a Question button that you can use that only I will be able to see. And those of you watching on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook, I'll be checking in on my phone as well to see those of you on those platforms. So Ben, time to bring the slides up, and any thoughts before you get going?
I will. What I would say is that we're going to delve into a lot of different aspects just to frame this up of thought leadership, but it's part of this kind of crisis trilogy. And if you saw the other other webinar episodes, I'm calling them. It's a show. It's a show, Alex. It's a show.
It's a show. 100%.
There you go. But the first one to kind of frame this up is we did pivot, don't pause, specifically focused on the past 4 financial crises. What were the top 9% of companies doing that outperformed the market by at least 15%? So we sort of framed that up. Second session, we did crisis marketing. So specifically, what are the types of marketing you should invest in? What are the types of marketing that performs the best? How do you leverage that during crisis times? And then the third, in this session, really we're delving into one of those primary marketing channels, which is thought leadership. And the idea here is that when you become a thought leader, you pull people towards you. You attract more customers. You attract business partners. You attract leads. And so it's a heck of a lot easier if you do it right to pull people towards you than to push yourselves towards them, right? Push means I need enterprise call centers. I need lots of sales reps in the field. We're going to push and we're going to reach everyone. So that's at the crux today. And what we'll find out today is that thought leadership can be accelerated by a factor of 10 during a crisis. So actually, you can actually have a time machine here and speed it up. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I will key up my slides.
Awesome. And yeah, just to add, actually, one of the most popular questions that I get asked is, when is the replay available? And this one will be available at around 11 o'clock this morning, once we've finished up answering any questions off the back of this. But also the previous 2 webinars that Ben's just alluded to are available right now. So again, if you enjoy this one and you haven't caught up with the first 2, I would advise you to go back and listen to them as well. They're similar type of time scale, about 45 minutes to 60 minutes, including the Q&As afterwards. And again, if you get value from this, then redirect people back to festivalofenterprise.co.uk. All they need to do is what you guys have done, register, and they'll be able to watch all 3 of those in the mini series. I feel like it's Star Wars or something like that, really.
There you go.
Right. Well, listen.
Let's do these first 3, and then we'll have to do the prequel after that.
We will. We'll have to be a time machine all over again.
Yes.
Right.
Well, thank you, Alex, and thank you for having me again. And hello, kind of the Festival of Enterprise community. How to become a thought leader during crisis times. My name is Ben Kaplan. I'm the CEO of Top Global. It's a network of agencies. We work in 20 countries around the world. We're known for a lot of viral marketing, data-driven marketing, integrated marketing across lots of different channels, how to make basically marketing more efficient, effective, and scalable. And we do that for really large companies, some of the biggest in the world, and also small and scrappy startups. And what I want to do today, as we frame this topic, is one of the things I always say is, be careful of who you take advice from, but be patient with those who give it. So let me give you a little bit about my perspective on thought leadership, because I've done this now a few different times for myself, for my companies, and also for my clients. And I'll give you a little bit of perspective just in maybe 60 seconds to 90 seconds on that. And then the rest of it's going to be all about how you can do it. So just to give you some perspective, before I had a global marketing agency, I was the author of this book. That is actually me on the cover. I hope it doesn't deter anyone from actually reading it. It was called How to Go to College Almost for Free, College in the United States, kind of a synonym for university. So it's just like how to pay for your higher education. And it was the first time I had to become a thought leader, because I was the kid who, right out of, when I was like, 18 years old, right out of high school, I hustled around, won 24 scholarships, $90,000, went to Harvard virtually for free. And then I wrote a book about how to do it and self-published it. And no one knew about me or the book, and printed it 5,000 copies. And so had to become a thought leader on college and university admissions, financial aid, really, really fast. And we ended up selling 65,000 copies of the book that first year. Did a national bus tour across the U.S. That helped me get on the Oprah Winfrey Show. That sold a few hundred thousand more copies. And then we started taking the book around the world. And one of the things when I realized the power of thought leadership was the book became one of the rare books, self-published books, that becomes a global bestseller. And it ended up being the largest book deal ever in the US for a first-time non-celebrity author, when I eventually sold it to HarperCollins later. And that was my venture capital. That's how I got started. So that was the first time I became a thought leader. And I realized, just kind of through trial and error, there was tremendous power in it, because it could accelerate so many of other things. And then later, there was this program called Startup Chile. And in Chile, they have an incubator there where they give you money for your startup. They don't ask for any equity. They give you a place to live, a place to work. And I became the pitch trainer in Startup Chile, focused on how helping companies there how to pitch investors. And as a result of Startup Chile, then I started helping people do media campaigns and marketing campaigns to get traction. And so quickly, I needed to become a global thought leader about how to market, how to do integrated marketing, how to accelerate your marketing. And so that was a new challenge. And what came from that was the agency and all of the work we've done. This was 2012, so all the work we've done the past 8 years, and started helping launch companies in 50 countries. So that was the second time I had to become a thought leader. And so that's part of my perspective. And finally, we do this now a ton. I think we've done this I've made, probably worked on campaigns for hundreds of companies, hundreds of CEOs or founders or C-suite leadership for these 10 core agencies, helping them all become thought leaders. And we have agencies that specialize in data, like Top Data, or creative marketing like top creative, or certain verticals like education or finance or government. So this is kind of the realm we work in, and we've created hundreds of thought leaders, both companies and individuals, through this. So that brings us to the first central question, which is, why is the current crisis a window of opportunity for thought leadership? And what's interesting about the crisis, and if you tuned into my first presentation on Pivot, Don't Pause, well, the current crisis is really a combination of a health crisis, an economic crisis, and now a social cultural crisis on top of it. So we've got crisis all over the place, right? And the question is, why? What is it about a crisis that usually a crisis means like it's not a great time to do something, right? It's like it's being disrupted, but why is it a good time for thought leadership? And we can look at that a little bit more deeply. So kind of first point is that in uncertain times, there is high demand for those who can help show us the way forward. So specifically, we have a high degree of uncertainty right now, right? We don't know what's going to happen in the UK and around the world in regard to COVID-19. But besides from the healthcare, we don't know what the economic impact will be. There's also different social and cultural movements that are starting. There's a lot of uncertainty. So anytime there is uncertainty, and I'm an economist by training, right? And so if there is a high demand for something, that increases the price or increases the value. So right now we certainly have high demand, because when we're uncertain, we want more certainty. Second, there is tremendous high audience availability during the stay-at-home period. So you know this, Alex, right? There's increases in online engagement. More people are opening emails. Like across our clients, probably 50% increase in open emails we've seen. In terms of click-through rates for things, we've seen, depending on industry, 60 to 80% increases in click-through rates. So we've got like a highly, captive audience where all of our metrics are up. So one, there's a high demand for thought leadership, and two, people are just more available to consume thought leadership. And then three, there is actually a low supply of established content on trending topics, right? Like we don't have this huge corpus on, how to be, productive or less stressed out, or scale your company or market effectively when you're working from home and you're not in the office, and things are changing week to week with health notices. Like there's not a lot on that. So at the same time, we have high demand for thought leadership. We have a really captive audience, and then we have a low supply of thought leadership at the same time. And that's even more so because there's a low supply of new content because there's corporate disruption and cost cutting. So not only is there lack of established topics right now or content, but there's less people supplying it. Why? Because marketing departments have been laid off, or they're focused on other aspects of their business. So my point is this. If I would have told you, let's say in January, back before all this craziness happened, and I would have told you, hey, listen up, come July, we're going to see, really high demand for any content you create. That's like through the charts. We're going to see, people that are just like waiting for what you're producing. Like they're waiting online for you. We're going to see less other people who are your competitors creating content or creating thought leadership. And we're going to just see, in general, high demand, less supply. The value of this is going to increase. If I would have told you this back in January, you just said, okay, I'm in. July, I've got to ramp up my thought leadership. This is a unique golden opportunity. And that's actually what we have now. That's the situation. So the first point here is now is a great time to ramp up your thought leadership, whatever your business might be. Now, here's the formula. Greater need plus higher engagement plus lesser competition equals accelerated thought leadership. And what does accelerated thought leadership mean? Essentially, you can accomplish now in the next 3 to 6 months, which would have taken 3 or more years. And let's talk about how to do that. Okay, so 4 questions to ask to start to understand what is thought leadership. And the first question are, what are the qualities of a top tier thought leader? So what does it take to be a thought leader? Let's just break that down, because I think we sort of assume things about that and we don't know. And Alex, maybe just to, because I know you always have good ideas, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What do you think, Alex, is something that you go for? If someone's a thought leader, what are some of their qualities that you think they have?
Some of the qualities of a thought leader. You are putting me on the spot, aren't you?
Yeah, but like, what is it? Like, is there a thought leader you follow? What do they do? Like, what are they good at? What are the kind of things? Is there someone else? Like, I'm trying to think of. And by the way, let's chime in the chat room. So if you guys listening, like Andy or Paula, I see you guys there, or Karen, chime in. What's what are the qualities of a thought leader? Like what's a popular one? Actually, we might even just do you have someone you admire as a thought leader? Alex, is there anyone you admire in kind of the business world?
Yeah, I can see Karen's already posted up as well. She's put integrity, credibility, expertise.
Here's what when I speak in the UK, here's the one I get a ton of. Let's see if you guys agree with this or not. I always get people saying Richard Branson.
Yeah, me too, all the time.
He's a thought leader. So let's think about him for a sec. Richard Branson, what are his qualities that make him a thought leader? What is it about Richard Branson? What does he do?
I think whilst he comes across as humble, and I have met the guy a number of times, he's also kind of ever present, media wise, I think,
Okay, so he's all over the place. He's humble with a modesty, given, he's a billionaire and has a certain position. Yeah. It's kind of endearing. I see what else. I see people saying innovative, humility. Okay, Ray Dalio, who wrote Principles. Yeah. Right. So Ray Dalio is one. What is it about Ray Dalio, Andy, that does it? What makes him a thought leader? Other than the fact that, he's a rich guy, been pretty successful. That's some of it. So some of his background makes him a thought leader. He's knowledgeable, right? He has a way. So that's some of it. What else? Anyone else? Humility, innovation, expertise. He's about systems. Okay, so Paula, because he's about systems. So there's something. It's not just that he talks about stuff and gives advice. There's something that appeals to you about that. He's about systems, and what appeals to you about systems, right? It's like he sort of simplifies complex things. He makes it easier to understand, to put your finger on, to use it. Restless, driven, motivational. Okay, so let me jump back in and let me kind of categorize some of these things for you so we can kind of learn how we might become better thought leaders. So if we go here, and can you see my screen again there, Alex?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, so here's the first quality. As we see the kind of the picture of Steve Jobs here. Someone whose views on a subject are authoritative. That's kind of the first one, right? It's like you have to be authoritative on a subject to be a thought leader. So sometimes though, what does that mean? Does that mean you have to be at Jobs level? Not necessarily. It depends what the subject is, right? So you have to have some type of authority, number one, just to, and we'll talk about how you can create that on your own. Number two, you can't just be an authority and lock yourself in a room, right? You have to be someone who influences the belief of others. Whether we were talking about Ray Dalio, whether we were talking about Richard Branson, right? They influence people. So you have to go beyond, and you have to be able to affect what others believe, not just be really knowledgeable yourself. That's number two. What else? I would argue this is less obvious. To be a thought leader, you need to be someone who attracts other talented people. You can't do this on your own, right? It's like, people like Richard Branson or Ray Dalio, or if we could go down the list, like there's other folks around them that they attract. So to be effective, you need a conduit. You're just one person. So they attract other talented people. And here's a fourth one I would say. Someone who can turn ideas into action. This is less obvious, but this is like not just pontificating. It's not just saying things, but it's like, wow, there's an ability to put something into motion, right? That it's not just a bunch of words. You're not just like a pundit. You can drive things into action. So let's just like look at that one more time. And just to go back, you got to be authoritative on a subject. It can't just be all about you. You got to be able to influence the belief of others. You're going to change their beliefs. You got to be able to attract talented people around you. Man, that's going to make life easier if you can get some really good people around you. If you're a startup founder, an entrepreneur, a business owner, I mean, imagine if you can just like attract amazing people, what you can accomplish. And then finally, you can't just be all about just like high level ideas and strategy. You got to be able to do something. So when we look at that, when we look at those qualities, what happens is we have a broader view of what we're trying to accomplish, right? It's not just about, I wrote an article for Medium and people shared it. That's part of it, But it's like, how do I take things a step further? And so it brings us to question number 2. So we've got us, so one, we want to be a thought leader. We want to be a top tier thought leader. We want to be authoritative. We want to influence others. We want to drive to action. We want to kind of be more than just someone who just talks about things. And so how should you choose thought leadership topics? And so let me give you a sense, if whatever field you're in, these are kind of different ways that you can start to figure out what you should be a thought leader on. Here's the first way. Push the boundaries on topics you know. What I mean by this is everyone says like, okay, I'm a thought leader, I'm in the, I don't know, I'm a chef. I know food. I'm in, I can cook food. I'm an expert on food. And that's good, but what are the other areas around that you might be able to expand in small ways your expertise? So maybe you're a chef and you source organic food, and as a result, you know a bit about horticulture, how to grow food, how to farming techniques. Maybe that's one little area beyond. What else? You're a chef. Maybe as a result, sustainability practices, some environmental things because of how those things are sourced. Maybe if you're a chef, you also have to teach other people in the kitchen to execute recipes like you do. So you're an instructor, you're a teacher. So what you start doing is starting to define your area of thought leadership is pushing the boundaries on topics you know. Let me give you an example of myself. So I got my start when I was, more than 20 years ago, when I was right out of college, and I was an expert on how to pay for college because I had done it myself. But pretty soon, I started expanding those areas because it wasn't just getting scholarships to pay for college. I learned how to apply for financial aid. So it was financial aid, but then it wasn't just paying for college, it was getting admitted to college or university. So that became an expertise. But then once you're doing that, one of the trade-offs with paying for college is for families is saving for retirement. So I expanded and became an expert on saving for retirement in terms of how it impacts college savings. But then once I was in retirement, then I was a little bit broader and expert on personal finance. Eventually, I wrote a column that was syndicated across the US called Scholars and Dollars. That was the intersection of education and personal finance. But once I was doing the column, I started appearing on CNN and Fox News and many other TV shows. So I started becoming an expert on how to get on TV, and that led more. So the point is, push the boundary on topics you know to find more ways that you can claim different territory as potential thought leadership for you. Does that make sense, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it does.
Okay, so that's way number 1. If you're thinking, what topic should I tackle? Number 2, think small to become big. This is really counterintuitive with thought leadership because lots of folks, they will say, I want to be a thought leader on all of social media, right? Mm-hmm. I want to be a thought leader on all of marketing. They have these really big ideas, and those are good, those are bold, those are ambitious goals to become a thought leader on a really big topic like that. But what I'd encourage you is that a way to get there is to think smaller. So start to think in little niches, little areas, little examples, little ways that you can basically will have no competition for your thought leadership. So let me give you another example. Maybe you have a business that, let's say deals with weight loss. Okay, you could be, kind of a retail outlet for weight loss. You could be a tech company. You could design an app, whatever it is. So weight loss. But now maybe let's zero in on a specific kind of weight loss for a specific kind of person that everyone ignores, right? So we're in a pandemic right now. Maybe it's, weight loss specifically for a particular type of person that, has had to kind of shelter in place, hasn't had exercise equipment at home, lives in an urban environment, so they're not going to have tons of parks and things around them that they can go places they can exercise. Let's narrow that down, or let's look at a subgroup, maybe let's look at pregnant women, or let's look at those who were former athletes that kind of put on weight after giving up training. Let's look at all those specific ways, and the reason is there's less competition. No one's doing that exact thing. But here's the little secret. you can accumulate these little niche areas, become a thought leader, and pretty soon, if you accumulate enough of these niches, people will think you're a thought leader on the entire space. So the fastest way to claim thought leadership over all of weight loss is actually not to go there right away. It's to go to these little niches. So that's the second strategy. Brings us to the third strategy, which is follow the rule of three. It's appropriate for a third strategy. And that is this. One example of your thought leadership is a fluke. Two examples of your thought leadership is a coincidence. Sometimes lightning does strike twice. But three examples of your thought leadership, that's a trend. And you don't need 5, you don't need 10, you don't need 100. You actually just need 3. Because once you can set a trend, that establishes your expertise. So if you're looking for your thought leadership space, you're saying, oh gosh, I need more credentials. I need more things, right? Like I'm a chef, and what gives me the right to sort of be, a thought leader on food? Well, it's the rule of 3. Find 3 specific examples. If you have 2, let's create the third. If you have 1, we can create 2 more. So it's the rule of 3. And it works the same way on niche areas, that weight loss example, right? If you're like weight loss for, let's say a certain type of, pregnant woman, that's one type. Second type is those who are former athletes, that's number 2. Third type, we brainstorm another one, that's 3. You get 3 and you start to be able to claim the entire space. So follow the rule of 3. So that brings us there, and I'll stop before I get into the kind of the third question. Alex, do we have any questions on that? And anyone, I know we had like great participants like, I see Paula and Andy, you guys are leading the way. Alan, Tadane, Laura, Karen. Does that make sense in terms of how you start picking topics and expanding upon your comfort zone in areas? Don't think too big, think small. And if you think small, you'll get big.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And it's, when I'm, just as an example, when I'm helping people create podcasts, again, their initial reaction is to go big. And then they go, let me launch a podcast in the business space. And I'm like, okay, do you know how hard it is to get known in the business space if you're starting from, rung 1 of the ladder? So, okay, let's look at the sub niches for those categories, and there might be a social enterprise niche. There might be a marketing niche. And again, it's like you want to kind of dive below that. Again, you don't want to go all in on marketing as the first one, because again, that's too broad as well. So yeah, that makes total sense for me. How about everybody else out there? I know there's a delay in people replying, but
yeah, let us know what you think, and let us know. Here's another question for you, for all those folks. And I was naming you by name because I saw your names fly by, but other people too. What are you trying to become a thought leadership in? You're right. So maybe. Thank you. My presentation makes perfect sense. That's good. I'm not fishing for compliments.
But, good.
But I'll take it. But besides that, let us know. And Alan, appreciate the comment on thought leaders seem to have an ability to think outside the box and laterally. Yeah. I'm gonna show you in a second how to think outside the box. I'm gonna give you kind of 3 principles of that in a second. So hold on to that thought. I'm gonna jump back in the presentation, but feel free to post a question. And I think the key thing here is realizing, I think, that you're a thought leader in more areas than you probably realize. In more areas than probably realize, and that's how you start expanding your comfort zone. Let me give you one quick example. So when I first did my book, when you're an author, one of the best things you can do is get on the Oprah Winfrey Show, because you tend to sell a lot of books. And so I had pitched Oprah 3 months in a row, 1 pitch per month, and not really Oprah herself, but Oprah her producers. And I remember I had a book called How to Go to College Almost for Free. So it was lots of things about college, paying for college. So I pitched 1 pitch, didn't hear back. 2 pitches, didn't hear back. 3rd month, another pitch, didn't hear back. So I was keeping going. But then the 4th month, before I could pitch, I actually got a phone call from Oprah's producers. And they actually said, you know what? We've been tracking you. We like what you've been suggesting. We've actually created a file on you. And actually, we have a show coming up we think you'd be great for. And it's a show on teaching kids about money. Do you think you could talk about what you do with paying for college and scholarships in the context of learning about teaching kids about money? And of course, Oprah's producer called. I'm like, yes, I can do this. Absolutely. Yeah. So I went on the show in an area that actually wasn't like my core area. It was one of those tangential areas. And it's like, you know what? if I do know a lot about having a financial stake in your education. That did teach me a lot of lessons that made me much more careful with money, having gone through that experience, because I wasn't going to waste my education when I had to hustle around and get scholarships for it and fellowships for it. And so I did have a perspective on that. And that ended up being, after I went on that show on Oprah, a related area that I became more of a thought leader in. And that was something I had not even anticipated. And so even others can suggest things that expand the comfort zone of what you do, and look for little ways to expand that. Okay, great. So let me jump back in here. I'm going to share this slide deck again, and we're going to start answering the last two questions here. So if we go in here, okay. So Alex, is that all right? Can you see that again?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. So question number 3. How can you quickly establish a position of influence? I get this question all the time. Like, this sounds great. I want to do it, but like, I can't wait to write a book and publish the book to become a thought leader. What can I do faster now? And so one of the fastest ways to establish your thought leadership is to become a source of truth for data in your industry. And data sounds sometimes a little bit like daunting, or it's big. How can I be, how can I do that? I'm going to show you some simple ways to do it. But here's why data is a close cousin of thought leadership. Because if you have some unique data, that means you have a monopoly on information that no one else has. And the fact that you have that information helps to establish, one, that you're an expert in the area, because like people who aren't experts don't generally have data that no one else has. 2, it gives you something that everyone wants. So if part of thought leadership is attracting people to you, pulling people to you, and you've got something interesting, noteworthy, valuable, then that really helps as well. So let me give you an example of why I think thought leaders and why all of you watching today can create data-driven news. Here's how this works. And what we're trying to do is find, and I'll give you sources of data in a second, but here's how this works. We'll look at a timely news peg. So what's trending in the news right now in your field of expertise? What are people talking about? And we'll try to say, let's comment on that. So we're not just making data, that is just generically interesting. It's like, how can we be interesting now? We'll create a data study related to that news peg. So that data study, and by the way, at PR Hacker, that's one of my agencies, prhacker.com, or top agencies, networktopagency.com. We can help you do this. But one of the things we do is we'll do a data study. And is a data study like, a 100-page white paper? I mean, it could be, but it could also just be a blog post. It could also just be a Medium article. So don't get too caught up in how complex the study needs to be. It's just a vessel, a vehicle for delivering data. Third, you post the study on your website or someplace that it's easy to find it. Right? Websites are helpful because most of you can benefit from search engine optimization. And I'm going to show you how this really helps your Google rankings in 1 second. Number 4, you pitch that data story to mass media. So what's great about this is you can do this on your own. Lots of different media outlets, either actually with articles show email addresses of their reporters, but B, you can get to a lot of reporters via Twitter now and so forth. They're just like public on Twitter. You can get to them that way. Or you can also use an agency like ours, PR Hacker, to help you do it. So you pitch that data story. Then 5, the media links to your full data study. You get the link and you get inbound traffic and SEO, because the fastest way to accelerate your Google rankings is actually to get inbound links. And when all of this happens, when you become the source of this and people come to you, this is a huge step forward in your thought leadership, right? Because thought leaders generally have interesting data and insights that add value to the conversation. So if you're not a thought leader yet, just get the interesting data and insights, act like you're a thought leader, and you will become one, right? So, and here is this different sources of data for each time window. So you can, if maybe you can create your own data. So if you have that, you can, for instance, survey your customers. You can survey your partners, like simple things you can do like that to have an interesting, a bit of data. Sometimes people are surprised that as little as like, a survey of 400 people with the right statistical sampling can actually be used as authoritative for a much bigger population, right? You can survey 400 people and come up with an insight for all of UK. That's possible. Second, public data. We use a ton of public sources from governments, cities, countries, and we'll mash them up in interesting ways. All of that public data is usually super difficult to understand. So just by making it simpler, we'll use that. Third, we'll use digital data. Do you guys in the UK use a site like Indeed, Indeed.com for kind of job postings and stuff like that?
Yeah.
You guys use it? So I've used Indeed's API to look at job creation data to have insights on unemployment and predicting unemployment levels based on the jobs I see created through the Indeed API, right? That took us about half a day's worth of work to do. And so suddenly we had insights for, the US and countries around the world using data about what jobs are being created. Or brand data. So if there's other branded data that you have access to through partners or other things for internal that you can get at. So maybe it's not a survey, but maybe it's like, you have internal, numbers on, wow, the type of engagement that people are more engaged, customers are more engaged. I'll tell you right now, we have a client, they're called ZenReach, and they have data on how busy stores are because they're supplying data on retail foot traffic. And so we're doing all kinds of thought leadership for them right now, predicting where there's going to be problems with COVID-19 because we can actually see when stores are more dense and there's more density in the store, so we can know there's less social distancing. We're doing all kinds of thought leadership from them now. They're appearing on TV, radio, newspapers all over the world as a result. So that's their internal data. So these are all different ways to gather data for each time window. And let me give you, let me just pause there for a second. Does that make sense to everyone before I jump in and go into kind of the data blueprints? The data is just powerful as a thought leader because here's the alternative. Go write a book, right?
Yeah.
Go write a book. That's a lot. This is a shortcut because it's like, go do a survey of 400 people and you can use an online survey tool to do it. Come back, package the result, and you can do it. That survey, I'm an author, so it takes a lot to write a book. That survey is going to be like way easier and way faster, right? So that's why I'm kind of emphasizing this.
And Karen says, what do you mean by turnkey data? And I'm guessing you just mean it's ready for immediate use. It's ready, it's good to go.
Yes, try to find ways. So for instance, and this is something easy, like when we use Indeed.com, I mean, we're just trying to use the data. I mean, we actually use their API. They have a programming interface, but you don't even have to do that. You can just be like, how many jobs are available in X industry? Let's track that over time. Did it change? What was it in March, April, May, June? I'm just giving you a very simple example. It's more about the idea and the concept and making it difficult to gather the data, right? So the point about is that, and actually I like the comment from Alan here.
Yeah, nice.
Is that the point is that what we're trying to say is that, like, it used to be you have to write a book to be a thought leader. What is a book? A book is just a vehicle or a vessel for encapsulating your ideas or qualities or credentials that make you a thought leader. So the cool part is a book's not the only vessel. And a book kind of, probably takes you a year at least to write. Then it takes you another year to publish it. So instead of picking that as the vehicle, look for other ways. And that's why a vehicle can be as simple as a blog post. But then again, lots of people write blog posts. So what can we do to make our blog post more authoritative? Let's put a bit of data in it, right? Let's put something that's a little bit harder to get to make it a little bit deeper. So that's what I'm saying. That data plus blog post, and then remember the rule of 3. Let's do 3 different examples of our expertise. So rinse and repeat 3 times. Suddenly you can be a thought leader in 3 months, not in 3 years. Okay. So let me jump back in. Oh yeah, we were going to say something, Alex? Sorry.
No, all good. Just saw Karen saying thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Karen. So let's jump back in. If you can see my screen again now, let me give you some data blueprints. So one is called geo-ranking. Geo-ranking is all about how can we compare different regions to each other to generate local news at global scale. So here's one way to package data. How does different cities in the UK rank against each other? For let's create the, we're going to create this for you. We're going to create the Alex Stressed Out Index, okay? And it's a ranking of the stress levels of UK cities. And we're going to go, across the UK and say who's most stressed out about COVID-19. So that's an example of a geo ranking, right? If let's say we ran a survey on that and asked for different signs of stress, we could do that ranking. So ranking different geographies is a way to package data that is very conducive to being covered by each of those local markets. And so that's one way to go. I'm kind of giving you like samples of how you can use data to become a thought leader quickly, right? That's called geo-ranking. And then that brings us to what makes an idea easy to spread. So we've talked about how and just to recap how, there's a great opportunity to be a thought leader. We've talked about how there are certain qualities of a thought leader that we have to not only be authoritative, but we have to attract people towards us. We have to put ideas into action. There's many things. We've talked about how things like expanding your comfort zone into tangential related areas is powerful. How to think small to become big, the rule of three. We've then said, okay, if you need a tactic or a strategy, data is a great way to do it. But then it also matters, what is the idea you're spreading, right? Earlier in the presentation, someone mentioned Ray Dalio. He has something called principles and he developed systems. So what made that want to spread? What is it? Not all thought leadership ideas are created equal. So if you're going to create one, let's create one that can really spread. And let me pose this question. So for everyone in the chat room, what do you think, what makes you want to share something? That's my question. Let's just list out some answers. And if you want to suggest, what makes you, if someone, posted something on Facebook and you decide to share it, what was the quality of that did it? Or someone emailed you something and you're like, oh, that's an interesting email. I'm going to a dinner party. Maybe this was pre-COVID, right? When we still had dinner parties a lot, right? I'm going to go tell everyone at the dinner party, I saw this really interesting thing. What was it about that? Okay, so Susan says personally relevant. Okay, so there's some relevance to you, Susan, that is kind of relatable. That's one thing. Why else would you share something or spread something? Okay, so it's interesting and engaging. So it's just like, okay, thought-provoking. Okay, sure. But why is something thought-provoking? What would it be? Is it just like what would just cause something to be thought-provoking to you? And okay, it needs to fire your imagination, Alan. Okay, it's new information. Okay, so it's fresh, it's novel, it's something different. Fires your imagination. Does anyone in this call share cat videos? Anyone?
Yeah.
Why do you share the cat video? Okay, Karen says a big no. Karen,
big capital no.
Dog videos, Karen, not cat videos. What else? Okay, you want to add value to? Okay, that's interesting. Today you said something. You want to add value, right? You're actually talking about your personal brand, maybe, right? Like you might share something because it reflects well on you, right? If you found something interesting and you found this great article, and you share it, and you share it with a kind of interesting comment, it kind of supports your brand, what you're about. Sure, Paula, it solves a problem. Okay, these are all great answers. So let me kind of go into, I would argue that we can categorize all of that into three things. Okay, and here is the first example of that. And Alex, can you see my screen again? Okay, all good. So here's the first thing. What makes an idea easy to spread? It's got to be simple. It's got to be simple. Why? It's almost a prerequisite that it has to be simple. The reason is, let's say it's brilliant, but complex. So if it's brilliant but complex, and Alex, I'm going to tell you about this thing I read the other day, this thing I heard, and it's amazing, but it takes me 5 hours to explain it to you, right? The problem is, it's brilliant. This is amazing, but it takes me, we got to sit down for 5 hours. One, I know you're a busy person. I'm a busy person too. I've got to carve out time in your schedule for 5 hours. But then two, you hear it and you're like, oh my gosh, Ben, this is brilliant. I've got to tell everyone I know. The problem is, you heard it once, it took me 5 hours. It's going to probably take you 6 hours to repeat it. So, oh shoot. Now it's slow to spread. So we need ideas that have, it's almost like the law of actual physics here, which is like, you've just got to be able to communicate it fast if we want it to spread fast. So it can't take you 5 hours or even, even an hour, right? It's like, how can we do this really, really fast? So that's the first thing we're looking for, is simple ideas. Second, surprising. And when everyone said captures the imagination or novel or fresh or new information, that is the element of surprise. And why is that important? Well, because we think we've heard it all before, right? Like, oh, isn't this like, oh yeah, wasn't that company like, the Uber for blah, 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 or something else? Isn't this just like that other company that kind of flopped 3 years ago? Isn't that product just like, so like this is how we think. So it's got to break the expectation and surprise in some way. But now, simple and surprising, that's a good start, but it's not quite enough. Because let me give you an example of something that is simple and surprising, but it doesn't have the third quality. It's this. Blah! Right? Blah! That was simple, right? I just went blah. Was it surprising? Yes. A lot of people, when they're giving a webinar, they're not going blah. So that was surprising, caught your attention. But I didn't say anything of importance. It didn't have any greater meaning, right? This is a problem when you look at Super Bowl ads, right? Where you have like a dancing monkey dancing across the street, and it's simple and it's surprising, but it has nothing related to the company or business to drive forward in action. It doesn't have this third quality, which is significant. So does it have a deeper purpose? Does it say something of importance? Is it something that can drive us forward? So simple, surprising, and significant makes an idea easy to spread. So when you're evaluating what you might be a thought leader on, and you're talking about something, is it simple that people can get it right away when they're not really focused? Is it surprising? Does it break through the expectation in some way? And is it significant? Does it say something deeper? And by the way, this is a great framework for thought leadership. It's also a great framework for marketing. If you're trying to write that next email blast to your community, and you're like, can I make this simpler? Can I make this more surprising in the headline? Can I have a deeper significance? If you're brainstorming, Alex, your next podcast topic, what's it going to be? What's coming up? Simple, surprising, significant. If I'm brainstorming my next webinar, simple, surprising, significant. If we're gonna put a sign in the front of the store because we were trying to get people to walk into the store, simple, surprising, significant. So it's very useful as a framework like that. And let me give you a few examples of this in action. So a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Have we all heard of this parable? Does that sound familiar, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is something that is a common parable. It's a common saying, and this is a bit of wisdom that has been passed down through the generations. Let's analyze this in terms of a thought leadership idea. So let's use our framework. So is it simple? Yes. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. It doesn't get much simple. It's about birds and hands, right? It's very, very simple.
Yeah.
Is it surprising? It is super surprising. Yes. Why? What it says is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So one that I have here is worth more, is worth two over there. That's super surprising, right? One is better than two, or one is equal to two. But I thought more is always better. Like I thought I want two pizzas, not one pizza. But no, one here is better than two over there. Wow, that is surprising. That's a new kind of math. Now, is it significant? Absolutely. It's a widely applicable bit of wisdom. Let me give you an example. We could be talking about pizzas. We could be talking about birds in the wilderness. But you could also be in your next board meeting for your company, and suddenly someone says, should we expand into Asia? It's a great opportunity, and maybe we should go beyond the European market. And then you say, a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. Asia's out there, Latin America's out there, but we've got Europe right now. Let's focus on that. And everyone nods their head, right? So we've just spanned this bit of wisdom from like hunting and gathering to modern day boardroom, and it still applies, right? That's highly significant. So simple, surprising, significant, really, really interesting. And I want to give you a couple other examples, but I want you, when I give you these examples, to and I'm hoping everyone can do this, don't put on your political hat. I'm going to give you a political example because I think it's very instructive, but we're not saying pros, cons, for, against, liberal, conservative. We're not doing any of that. But I want you to kind of see a present day modern political example from the context of thought leadership. Okay. And as we do that, about this proverb has lasted for 2,500 years and basically transcends all cultures and languages. That's how much of a thought leadership in ideas is. Everyone has a version of this proverb. Here's the political example I'm going to give you. I call this the Great Wall of Trump. And then remember, you promised we're not going to discuss politics. This is just an example because I want you to kind of think about the impact of an idea. And this is a very high profile idea. So if you hadn't heard before, back in 2016, when Donald Trump was really a sort of businessman and reality TV show host, and at the time wasn't taken very seriously in the political world, he had one unusual idea, which was, he said, we want to build a big wall. We're going to build a big wall in the U.S. and Mexico. And again, we're not going to talk about or debate at all the merits of this idea. I simply want to talk about this with thought leadership. Okay, so let's talk about the Great Wall of Trump. Is it simple? Yes. It's a wall, right? it doesn't take a lot to understand a wall. At a time when lots of other politicians in the Republican Party in the US at the time were saying, like, here's my 12-point plan to tackle immigration, right? Like, it's a wall. Very, very simple to understand. Was it surprising? Yes. It is not normal for a politician. Like, people, it was a kind of a out of left field idea, or just different. And it's how simple it was and surprising that it sort of immediately got noticed right away. This wall. Is it significant? Well, for him, it really was, because it's not only significant, it's symbolic, right? It's, regardless of if the wall happens, it shows he's tough on immigration. And he was running on that. So it's simple, it's surprising, it's significant. What I would argue is that Donald Trump would actually not be president today of the United States were it not for the Great Wall of Trump, simply because it was the most viral thought leadership idea of that entire election cycle. And again, not based on merits at all. We can debate that till we're blue in the face. But simply a delivery vehicle for a simple, surprising, significant idea that suddenly turned the entire conversation to him, and everyone had to discuss this, right? So that's a different sort of example I wanted to give you. So here is the viral litmus test for your thought leadership idea. Is it simple? Can you understand it in less than 9 seconds? That's all you get. 9 seconds is like, how much you get if someone's like, at most consuming information in their newsfeed online. And in 9 seconds, you don't get like if A, then B, then C, then D, even if you can do that in 9 seconds. All you get is if A. That's it. It's got to be that simple. And why? Because people are bombarded with so much information. What you're saying is generally not the most important thing they're thinking about at the moment. So you just have to deal with that reality. So surprising, you ask yourself this question: does it defy your expectations? You need, if this is always expected a certain way in your field, your industry, if people could fill in the blank about what you're going to say, then can you make it surprise or defy expectations in some way? And finally, significant, does it convey a deeper truth? Remember, simple and surprising without significance is just getting a lot of attention with no real, kind of meat, substance behind all the sizzle, right? So does it convey a deeper truth? And if you think about that, and you think about your thought leadership ideas, you'll be able to come up with ideas that are much more sticky, will spread much faster, and will be much more viral. And let me just pop out of here for a second. Any questions or comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's good. That's good, isn't it? I like that example of the wall.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think for all of you watching that, maybe you're from a technical field or maybe you have a certain bit of expertise. What kind of tends to happen is you think like, oh, I'm an expert, so I use all the jargon. I use all the insider baseball. This demonstrates my knowledge. Whereas actually, it's good to demonstrate your knowledge, but how do you actually translate that into something that can be communicated very fast? So constantly, when we're dealing with technical topics or technical companies, we're constantly saying like, yes, you could be very technical, and if you have a very technical audience, they could understand it if they are 100% focused on what you're saying. But if you don't have their focus and you're sharing a post on LinkedIn, and they're only half paying attention to you and only for a split second in scrolling by your feed, then sorry, even a very technical, knowledgeable audience doesn't have the mind share to consume that. So you've got to be simple, surprising, and significant. And what I would sort of encourage you to think about is when we do this, and we come up with thought leadership ideas, and we do this, for instance, anyone who deals with sales, right? Who deals with sales, because we often, our clients can be Fortune 500 companies that come in. And so sometimes, our goal is that we want to help be thought leaders to them to help show where they can move their company through marketing. But sometimes the person we're trying to reach is not even the person on the call, the presentation, right? We've got to get them to communicate it to their boss or their boss's boss, who's like the CMO or CEO of this global multinational company. So here's the issue. Our goal is not just that when we do this presentation or in the sales capacity, that they understand it. I mean, they have to understand, but that's not the goal. Our goal is not even that they understand it and they think it's good. Okay, so we want them to think our ideas are good, but that's not even the goal. The goal is actually that they not only understand it, not only think it's good, but they could hear it once and explain it to other members of their team or their manager or their manager's manager almost as well as we could on our own. And so that's a higher bar, right? So for that bar, it better be simple, right? They've heard it once and they've got to tell someone else. It better be surprising, right? Because, you know, they're going to get there and get in this, and they've heard presentations from a million other marketing agencies before. So it better be something different. And then third, it better be something significant, right? If we just go in there and we got all this razzle and dazzle, but it's like, yeah, it's not going to move their business. It's not going to move the business metric. Then they're not going to care. So simple, surprising, and significant. What I would do if you have any kind of capacity to sell, to get new customers, to get people to consume something, your goal should be a higher standard. The goal is to get them to be able to tell someone else almost as well as you could do yourself.
Yeah, do you know? And I just saw Andy's comment there, and it reminds me of a friend of mine. He's got this business, which is not bringing in revenue yet. It's like 3 years into the journey, and it's like, you know, the best idea that you've ever had, and they're racing around the world trying to raise funds. And I'm like, when people ask me about it, I'm like, I can't explain, even after 3 years, even though I had it explained to me by him times, I still can't explain it to anyone.
Why would he explain it to you? You're like, you're nodding your head, right? You're probably like, oh yeah. But then you leave, you don't have that benefit anymore. And they're like, I've got to tell someone else, I can't do it, right?
Yeah, and I just thought, well, if I'm having that difficulty, imagine all of the potential funders who are listening to it, and they're like, well, I'm going to be parting with, you know, millions of dollars in cash, but I don't understand it. So why would I give you my money?
It's true, and it kind of speaks to actually the humility you have to bring to the process. And I know we talked about humility in the context a little bit of Richard Branson, his kind of approach to that. But here's why it's a bit of humility, because you have to. It's a little bit of humbleness to assume that, you know what you're saying is not the most important thing to the other person. They've got other things going on there in their life, their business, and everything else. And so you've got to be able to make an impact when they're focused on other stuff. It isn't the most important thing. So it takes a bit of humility to that, because usually, which I think is a great quality about founders, and I think this is a necessary quality of a founder or an entrepreneur, you have to think what you're doing is the most important thing. You have to be, in my opinion, offended that this does not exist in the world. What you want to create, that it doesn't exist. I'm offended that this does not exist. This has to exist. Of course, what I'm doing is the most important thing anything one can think about. So you need that. Otherwise, you won't stick with it. But at the same time, you need this other sense of humility, which is, you know what? From someone else's perspective, they may not realize that. They may not be focused on that. So how do I communicate my ideas in such a way that someone can easily understand and spread and share, and they don't have to focus on me? I'm not the most important thing in the world to them. And particularly if you're pitching a lot of investors, and I've been a coach for investors, it's a great approach to have, because, you know, you're going to be one of a big number, but if you can be simple and surprising and significant, they will remember you.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me kind of finish up, because I know we're a little bit over time here on just the final thoughts of the day. And I would say post your questions now if we want to wrap up with any final questions. But let me kind of wrap up with the most important things I'll say today, and then Alex, jump in if there's any final questions. So I'm going to go back to my screen, and I'm going to give you a couple bits of information for more information, and then I'll wrap up with my final thought of the day. So one more thing I want to mention is that one aspect of thought leadership that I think is hugely important to realize is that you don't have to be Richard Branson or Ray Dalio tomorrow, right? It's not all or nothing. Try to incrementally increase your thought leadership. Make your ideas 10% more simple, 15% more surprising, 20% more significant. Look at ways to expand on your comfort zone with that new blog post, with that new data study, in small ways. And if you do that, it's like compound interest. It grows over time, and thought leadership leads to more thought leaders. So sometimes people leave this and they think, this sounds great, but man, I've got a full-time job. You know, we're just trying to deal with the pandemic. How am I going to have time for this? Look for small ways to make simple progress, and it doesn't have to be as daunting as you think. And so what I would love to know is one, what are you working on being a thought leader on? And if you and let me know, and let me know if we can help. So this is my email, just ben.kaplan@prhacker.com. That's one of our agencies that you can check out that does a lot of thought leadership. Send me an email if you'd like a copy of the deck as well, slide deck. I'm happy to send it over. So ben.kaplan@prhacker.com. You can take a screenshot now if you'd like.
Posted it up as well. There we go.
Oh, what's that? Sorry, Alex?
I just posted it up as well for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Second thing, this is the thing I always ask. What is the one thing? And if you could tweet this at me, at Benjamin Kaplan, my question about the one thing is, what is the one thing from this presentation that you remember that was most useful, that you'll take with you? And I always, when I attend webinars or I attend conferences myself, I always focus on this, because what happens is, like, I learn 27 things, but then, like, I forget all of them when I leave. So I like to focus on what is my one thing, because if I can get one thing of value or one thing that sticks with me, I'm better off from having attended, right? So my question for you is, one, what is your one thing? And two, I would love to know what it is, actually, because I try to make my presentations more simple and surprising and significant too. And so if I know what resonates with you, that helps me get better as well. So what is your one thing? I think that's useful to you. Let me know what that is so it can help me get better. And I'd love for you to tweet at me, just at Benjamin Kaplan, and let me know that one thing, and I'll reply back. And then finally, one little thing before I end with a final question or two and the final thought of the day. If you want to connect with me, love to connect. Always, feel great energy from when I give a webinar. This is a little trick that we've done in the past, Alex. If you hold up your mobile phone, you have a LinkedIn app, and you go to the search bar, there's a little icon there that's a little QR code icon. Press it, and you have an option: either scan a code or display your code. If you choose scan a code and you hold it up to the screen right now, and you put it over that little QR code right there, it will take you to my page. Put in a LinkedIn request. Just say, hey, attended your Festival of Enterprise, webinar. Let me know which one, and then I'll see that, and I'll accept the invitation, and we can connect that way as well. And once we're connected on LinkedIn, then if you have other thought leadership that you're posting on LinkedIn, it's a whole other topic. I can help consume it, and I can give you some tips as well, and you'll see some of my thought leadership too. So that's the third way. I would absolutely love to connect with you. So that's where we're at. And Alex, any final questions or wrap-up comments before I wrap up with my final thoughts?
Yeah, everyone's busy screenshotting, taking notes. Lots of great comments from Naomi and Paola and Susan and Alan. Alan's got a good question. I like that one. Maybe to finish on. Hi, Ben. NASA are looking for a new and original statement for the next moon landing. How to follow one small step for man, but one giant leap for mankind? Question mark.
Okay. There you go. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, here's what I would say. And actually, we do a ton of at our agency. We do a ton of branding work. So we're constantly coming up with slogans. We're constantly coming up with names for companies. We do a lot of that kind of work on sort of positioning. And what that's a good one. I like it. One of the things I like about it is that let's analyze this from simple, surprising, significant. Is it simple, right? It's talking about steps. It's nothing simpler than that. Is it surprising? A little bit. It's a little bit surprising because you're saying like the scope of what this is, right? Like wow, it's just an interesting juxtaposition. Like I never thought that step was that important. And then is it significant? Well, it doesn't get more significant than one giant leap for mankind, does it? Yeah. So simple, surprising, significant. That's a good one. I like it. Maybe that's why it resonates. And I would say if you are trying to find your own slogan or your own saying or your own mantra, it can be really useful. And one of the little games I like to play is I will cycle through words in other languages. I will look for examples of words. I will cycle through quotes that exist. I will start breaking them up into different components. And then there's lots of ways you can kind of juxtapose them together. And so the whole key in coming up with those kind of slogans and phrases is basically, you can't limit yourself on bad ideas. You have to just generate ideas. And the point I always say when you're doing this, when we're doing this for clients is that you can't hold back because, your first idea may be bad. Your second idea may be awful. Your third idea may be, truly horrific. But the sixth or seventh iteration of that is where the good idea comes from. So one of the things when you're always doing this is you're always your worst critic. You have to prevent that. And maybe that's as a final point, Alex, that's a good wrap up for being a thought leadership. So much of us, we're tough on ourselves. We're our own toughest critic when it comes to thought leadership. We think that, oh, I could never be this thought leader unless I had that PhD, or unless I, worked 20 years in the field, or else I did this. We always have kind of excuses, mostly because we don't want to put ourselves out there. But instead, set aside that inner critic and that other voice. Instead, focus on how can you add value? How can you add value to the conversation? How can you do something that puts others before yourself and delivers value? And then how can you make that simple and surprising and significant? Maybe use a bit of data and maybe extend your comfort zone a little bit, and maybe remember the rule of 3, and maybe look to be authoritative in small ways rather than big ways first. And just remember those sorts of things. Then a lot is possible. You can be a thought leader. It can happen in as little as 3 or 6 months. And I really thank you all for coming, and I wish you that kind of success.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And I think, taking away the wrap up from Ben there, for everybody watching and listening here is, take that first step, put yourself out there, and, compound it over time. If you start putting those ideas out there and you, use the formula that Ben was saying, which Paola says is now her mantra, SSS, then, over time compounded, you do that every single day, then you're going to be 365% further along the line of being a thought leader in a year than you were this time last year. So just get started, start putting it out there. And I love that idea. I never thought of that with languages as well. That's a really cool idea. I like that. And to let you know, everybody, again, if you found value from this, which clearly a lot of you have, then please share this. This is literally going to be available for replay as soon as I end broadcast. And there are 2 other episodes in our mini series that Ben was kind enough to join us for. So just again, go to festivalofenterprise.co.uk, and on the homepage there is upcoming webinars and there is past webinars. So just have a look at the past webinars. Literally just search Ben Kaplan and you will find them both there. So Ben, thank you once again. Appreciate it. It's evening time over there in Oz. And yeah, stay in touch, and let's do something else again in the near future.
Yeah, thank you. Let's work on the prequel now. Okay, now we're going to do that. Okay, so let's work on the prequel. Would love to do it. And thanks so much for all that you do, Alex. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and those, especially those of you who interacted there, but everybody who joined, no matter what platform. So thank you very much indeed.
Yes, thank you, Paula. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Andy. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye-bye.